Want to join the conversation? Call us toll free. It's 1-833-296-TALK. That's 1-833-296-8255. Now, here's more of the Mike Buck Show on AM 690 and FM 94.3. The Answer.
Okay, so instead of talking about it's all about the money, it really isn't. But I tell you what, it doesn't hurt, and we're getting a whole bunch of it together, and we're going to continue our conversation. Actually, the news that just gave us a break in between HLTA business and Riki Ellison, who is here from Missile Defense Advocacy Alliance, as well as YIP, which is this is a unbelievable program. Now becoming a national program. And before we even give Riki anywhere near a microphone, Mufi, let's continue on discussing what we were talking about off the air before, and that is the way that Riki's philosophy and this program have embraced themselves to the way that you and many, many others in the community are supporting this effort, because it just plain makes sense.
It makes sense for so many reasons, Mike. I'm so happy Riki's brought this program that he established with 14 universities. They have an affiliation also with the National Football League. But as I said yesterday, it's not just about teaching these youngsters that come from areas like Ever Beach, Waipahu, Kalihi, underprivileged areas, if you will. It's not just about teaching them the game of football. It's teaching them about the game of life, character education, leadership, the self-esteem that they need, and so, you know, and incorporating also, as he does, the University of Hawaii football players who, because we don't have a professional football team,
that's our guys.
Those are our guys that these youngsters look up to, and the fact that they're focusing in on the middle school, because that's where the differences can be made for a student. That, do I want to go to college? What do I want to start getting ready? Starting my freshman year, it's at 6th to 8th grade level, and that's why this program, you couldn't talk about a more perfect program. Like the weather was perfect yesterday. So when they launched it, both Riki and Roy, the R&R guys, as I call them, it was terrific. And I just want to tell you again, Riki, thank you, mahalo on behalf of the people of Hawaii for bringing such an outstanding program here. We love football, but you're transcending the game of football and teaching them about how to be successful in life. Can't say enough about how much gratitude we have for you. And also as a member of the Polynesian family, being a Maori
the two
from
of
New
you guys,
Zealand.
and by the way,
graduated in New Zealand. He was
That's
in
right.
New
I was
Zealand
a
now.
Fulbright scholar in Wellington, New Zealand.
I'm also guessing that he's a perennial sponsor going forward, because how can you say
been
no,
with
right?
me from the beginning.
From the day
he
one.
was with me with Ron Cucci when we were fighting to get this thing in play maybe 10 years ago. So it's taken a while to do it. He's seen it. This is the Brett. But I'm also telling you that Hawaii is the center of the Pacific. And we need to be the example to the Pacific of integrating the cultures with the diversity of those cultures. And
Absolutely.
that way.
You know,
And you know what I love, just as an aside, guys, is yesterday while Riki was speaking and while you were speaking, I'm looking at the young kids who are learning things about you guys that they had no idea. They're looking at you, former mayor, the big tall guy, the basketball player. They're looking at Riki, a football player, a Super Bowl, a Rocket guy. No idea of the Polynesian roots that the two of you had. And every one of those kids was one of those kids that you're talking about. Wasn't that kind of special?
It was, That's what we're taught. That's what we want. We want to ignite their hearts.
yeah.
And by the way, I want to find out how we can bridge the gap. Riki's got a secret. How you can tell a kid that comes up the first day, we're not playing football today. We're going to do a few other things.
And we're going to feed you well. And we're going to clothe you. And we're going to pick you up from where you live. And we're going to take you back home. I mean, talk about the consummate football camp, if you will, that Riki does it from A to Z. And so, Rick, like I said, I just wanted to stay a little bit into your part of the show here, just to tell you on behalf of the people of Hawaii.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's a community-driven program. It's this one family, one tribe. It's everybody's. There's not any outside. There's no outsiders in this thing, and it shouldn't be. That's how the tribe grows, and the tribe expands. It's got to be done that way. And this is the perfect program of all my 14 programs, of melding that community around it. So it becomes one.
Oh, by the way, how quick can it grow? It's grown a lot. This year, how many?
We're sold out.
Yeah.
But I was talking to Mufi because I think we want to hold a section of it for the homeless boys.
Yeah.
So we know there's quite a few homeless boys and we want to provide at least a bunch of spots for them.
You see how, I mean, his heart just comes through every time of how he wants to truly help this community. He's truly vested into it.
That's why we keep asking him to come back.
That's right. Polynesian Football Hall of Fame, baby.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Mufi. And there's another thing. This has come up a couple of times, and I think this is kind of another important juncture, Riki, to talk about a little bit, and that is why that age group. I think you explained to everybody that was there at the meeting yesterday, at the luncheon, as they go out into the schools and into the stories and the press about why this is an important particular age for these kids. It's not, and there's reasons why you can't do this when they're in college, and you can't do it when they're in high school.
Yeah. There's another school that Mufi's didn't want to relate to, but it was called Princeton.
Yeah.
And Princeton did a study on our program, identifying where the biggest changes in life and where you can accelerate the child's life, and it's 1 through 3, and it's that age of 10 through 13 before they become teenagers, where they're looking for outside endorsement, outside leadership to guide them in a different direction. So that is that age that we are focused on, and they're there. They've had their parents or their family talking to them for all those years.
Yeah.
Now they want outside endorsement. They want outside mentorship. They want to change with that. So we focused specifically on that group because there's a lot of research there that tells us that's the best way to do it.
Well, the thing that I happen to notice, and I don't know if this has ever come into the philosophy when you're looking for help, but I thought I'm going to be able to contribute to this. These kids have any number of times in their life where they get to a fork in the road or a crossroad, and they have to decide. Do I go with these guys that are...
Yeah, but that's the crutch of leadership.
Amen.
It's the courage. It's the courage. And you have to have self-confidence. You have to have respect to make the right decision at the right time for the right reasons under extreme pressure.
Yeah.
And young kids and old kids, a lot of people go in the wrong ways in life because they don't have the courage. And they don't make those right decisions at those critical times. And we are putting around them people... the football players, the military that are able and have been successful in doing that type of leadership.
And speaking about being successful, when you were speaking yesterday, I could see some of the reporters really grasping on to some of the things you were saying about what you've learned, what the statistics that you've kept since this program started, how things improve.
But that's not even our program academically.
Yeah.
That's
what I'm talking about, academics.
Vocabulary last year, 54%.
Jeez.
In 2 weeks. And our math, a little bit more challenging, but we had a 13% increase in our math last year.
In 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. And our overall is about 30% increase. But the program's not focused on academics. But look what we do. I mean, we put them in classrooms. They're in a student-athlete classroom for 4 hours in the morning.
They would have never even seen the inside of one of these classrooms.
Yeah, and that's important because you got to show access. And that's access in their own community. So that's one of the big parts of the program.
One of the things that I learned, which was really cool, is I had the opportunity as the MC of the program to talk with a couple of the student athletes from UH. One of which was a senior, and he had just a very little smidge of eligibility left, and he started out doing the thing because the coach asked him to, and now he wants to do some more. In other words, this kid. He's learned what he wants out of life by being a mentor.
And one of the things we are also doing is developing leadership in there, because that feeling, right, Mike, the feeling that we all get from giving back to making a change is you can't buy that feeling.
Yeah, and by the way, a lot of these kids know in the very beginning that the likelihood of them becoming a professional football player is dim. Yeah. But when it happens, it happens. Now, this kid yesterday, one of them, is going to be a pro. This guy's a big kid, and he gets it. He's got both his feet on the ground, and I looked him in the eye, and I thought, when he puts the uniform on, I don't want to be on the other side of him. This guy is driven, really driven.
No, but across we had 3 first-round NFL draft picks this year.
Yeah, amazing.
That were leadership mentors in the program. But this is bigger than that. It's bigger than their careers in the NFL. It's teaching them how to contribute and how to be part of that tribe and how to be part of that community to make it better.
Okay, we got plenty more to come, including your opportunity to join us. We are The Answer. We are privileged to be in partnership with the Alliance Defending Freedom. They're on the front lines today fighting for your right to freely live and think out your faith. Here's Bob Trent, and he's got more on this week's Freedom Minute. We got more to talk about with Riki Ellison about the YIP, the Youth Impact Program, but we also want to take as many minutes as we can to spend on missile defense, because there have been major changes in the Pacific, and right now there's a whole bunch of people from armies in Honolulu, and it's time to really realize where we are and to start stomping on the ground a little bit more to get a little bit more attention brought our way, because we kind of need it. We slipped a little bit. More coming up right after this.
The Answer.
Okay, so it was Magnum Monday and 5-0 Friday. And coming up this year, man, a lot of changes. And the reason why we do that is because it calls attention to Hawaii. A lot of things call attention to Hawaii. I watched the great volcano story last night, and watching the devastation that happened in the Atlanta Estates, and realized how close to nature we are and how devastating things can be. And it reminded me of the missile that wasn't. And it made me think immediately of Riki Ellison. And I want to talk more about the YIP program, Riki, but I think it's also important to note that the other hat you wear and the big hat that you wear is going around the world talking about preparedness and defense of our country rather than offense of our country. And that is right now that we really need some special help here in Hawaii. And there happen to be a lot of players in town right now that might be able to help with that. What's going on with defense?
Well, we have our Land Pack conference today in downtown Waikiki. And as you may know, the Pacific has 7 of the 10 largest armies in the world.
Right.
So
in the Pacific Basin.
In the Pacific.
Right.
So our allies are all meeting here with our lead army and the Indo-PACOM commander to look at relationship building and deterrence, I believe, against China's aggressive behaviors that have been going forward over the last couple of years that everybody's seen. I would still state to you that the North Korean threat is the number one threat to our people today.
Is that because of the instability of the leadership there?
That's true, and that's because they're in the height of their negotiation. They do not want to give up their nuclear weapons. Yeah. And everybody else wants them to give them up. And their number one partner, their only friend is China. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be played, as we've talked through China and through North Korea. And we have not, we're seeing him now start up his testing a little bit, not long range, not nuclear, but he's still testing. He's flaring it up. Yeah. So we have to be ready, we have to be safe, and we have to continue to develop our capabilities to negate him, because that allows peace, that allows stability, and that allows us to stand off and say, hey, you're going to denuke.
You know, one of the things that, and we talked about this a lot before, and how quickly people are either capable or not capable. Looking at in Iran right now, them saying that enrichment is like this easy. It's not that easy, is it? However, we don't know how far along they really are. That's the problem.
Well, the problem is Iran has been working with North Korea since the mid-'90s when they developed the Scud system. So look, Iran's seen what North Korea has gotten. They got an audience with the president twice. Mm-hmm. So believe me, and that's their way to deter the United States and defend their homeland. They're going to get an ICBM. They are very, very close. They can do it, and if we're withdrawing, that's going to happen. And I'm going to also say that our fleet, our Abraham Lincoln, is surrounded by ballistic missile defense ships. Surrounded. Yeah. And we're in there with missile defense assets in there because Iran's Iran's most powerful weapons are its missiles. That's the poor man's Air Force that everybody's going to. I was going to say, what everybody fails to realize, they're expensive, but it pales in comparison is what the alternative would be. They're very expensive. But we can operate in those areas without being, controlled or influenced by Iran. And that's the biggest stabilizing area. But here we go again, right? So we only have a limited amount. We only have 40 of these. 44 of these, and they're mostly directed against North Korea. But if Iran comes on the picture,
how do you spread yourself?
You got to deal with this.
Now, the other thing is that we in America have always been able to make miracles happen, but to accelerate the process, when you say we have 40, it's not only what they cost; it's to physically do these is a little bit more difficult.
But we have 44, Mike, but we have to do an underlayer, which means because the 44 are not going to expand until 23 or 25. That's a long time.
You bet.
We have to build the missiles underneath that. So the Navy right here at PRMF have the SM-3 Block 2As that are.
By the way, you got to explain that.
Okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
what we're talking about here is there's going to be layers of armament.
Yeah.
The big guys are over here, but in the meantime, you don't need the big guy to deal with every problem. So as you recognize some of the other threats, there are smaller armaments that will do the job.
And that's where we've been exposed here in the Pacific dramatically by China and China's movements in the South China Seas with a concept called aerial denial, access denial to that region by them putting capability to stand us off. So we have a gap in our ability to defend our forces forward against cruise missiles and cruise missiles that are over the horizon. This new thing called hypersonic. And
wait a minute. I was reading a little bit on your website about that. What's hypersonic?
Hypersonic is both the Chinese and the Russians have developed. In fact, we developed it first in the 60s, but we said it's too volatile for us we backed off of it. But basically, it's a rocket, a ballistic missile that goes up very high in space, and then it stops burning, and it comes down in the upper atmosphere, and then it skips across it, picking up acceleration like a rock you throw across a smooth lake.
Across the water, sure.
So it skips across, and it doesn't have a projection of exactly where it's going to be when it skips, and then it comes into the atmosphere up to speeds of 20 times the speed of sound, and then it comes down.
Hypersonic.
So that's that. But they haven't deployed it. They're still testing it, and we are. And that conference today is talking about our own hypersonic. And I think that the problem here is that China doesn't sign to any arms control agreements. They never have. So we have limited ourselves with agreements with Russia. Now, we withdrew ourselves from the INF Treaty to be able to compete with hypersonic. I
was going to say, that's compete with hypersonic.
Because we couldn't compete.
Yeah. Okay, herein lies, I think, one of the main queries, and that is we're looking at two fronts here. One front is the one that's on the front page of the paper every day, and that's the trade deficit. And that's the fact that here we are with a, quote, enemy / friend / who knows who these people are. They're also our business partners. So we have a very, very thin but not imaginary line that we have to accomplish, right? You got to work on both issues, not just trade or not just defense.
Well, that's power projection. And you can't depend, as you said, but you have to have equal economic power. You have to have military power, and you have to have statesman diplomacy power, and now you have to have internet power. All those have to be focused. And the issue we have with China is that China doesn't play by our rules or our norms or our values. So when we give foreign aid, when we give support, there are strings attached to how you treat humans. There are strings attached on a lot of things, on our morals that we go with it. China doesn't have any strings attached, and they have a lot of money, and so it's very easy for these countries in the Pacific. To get
talk about things like, and I know you hear this throughout your travels, the carbon footprint. I mean, here we are being scolded and spanked for revving our engines and doing all of this stuff. And in the meantime, there are certain cities in China right now that on any given day you can't go outside.
Okay. And they don't play by the rules.
And no rules. And these are like 20+ million cities.
They're 1.4 billion.
Yeah.
We're 300 million.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing that we're looking at a position. They look at us as not in the position we should be in to be the world dominant player. They want to be it, and that's their rightful way.
Meanwhile, our president is telling a lot of our allies, okay, this is a rule that I guess we have to assume, but you got to help. We're paying for everything.
Right. But we all have to be that shining light. We all have to stand up together in relationships that favor the morality of the Western civilization in terms of respect for human life. We have to do that.
But look at the onslaught that's going on apparently in Europe and certain countries, even in our country, with the huge number of different folks that are coming in and actually shifting the balance of who we are ethnically and religiously and everything else.
But that's again, I had an opportunity in Arizona with the Homeland Security Advisor and the governor of Arizona. The first quarter, 4 years ago, there was 100,000 crossings.
100,000.
Today, it was 400,000 in the first quarter.
Yeah, shocking number.
So we can't process them, okay? Just going through the legal entry points, you can't process them. They don't have enough people to process. So And there's a 12-year waiting list to become a U.S. citizen because the resources have not been in there. And now you've got those vast borders where they're just pouring over because they're not going to go through the processing. So we are undermanned.
Yeah.
And that is something that we're going to have to deal with. But obviously.
And by the way, that overshadows politics. It's bodies. Here they come.
So you have to restrict and get the right people inside our country and go through a filtering system. That has to be done. But I think you also got to focus on the failed democracies in South America that are forcing these guys to immigrate. Because that's where the problem starts.
Are they under some horrific?
Right. So we got to figure out. We got to support and get democracy in, and that's where China and Russia are fighting over. Again, this is going back to the 1960s and 1950s when we came out as the number one power in the world after World War II. And we had a peer competitor that was challenging our democracy. Our democracy is being challenged again.
Yep, here it comes.
Mike?
By the way, can we solve the entire world's problems in 29 minutes? Yes, probably. We're working on it, and we'll try that more. Ricky and I will be right back after news break with Chaz Ontai, our news director. Good morning, Chaz.
And here's more Mike Buck on AM 690 and FM 94.3. The Answer.
Oh, yeah, stand in a row. Salute this, salute that. Amen. It's every now and again, not often enough, I get together with Riki Ellison. I never know where we're going to go because there's just so much to talk about. Obviously, football, and I must tell you another thing. Go back to this YIP project just for a minute. This is the Youth Impact Project that Riki started up years ago. Now it's in, 14 different places? I mean, it's amazing. And Hawaii was where you had your eyes on it in the very beginning because of your affinity to Polynesia and your own background and everything else. And it took you the longest to get it going here.
This pushed it over. So my Polynesian,
absolutely. The Polynesian Hall of Fame
pushed it over for me to say, hey, we got to do something in this state.
One of the things that they have to do on the mainland is they have to train announcers how to talk about us and how to pronounce our names and stuff. Isn't that kind of funny? You're watching that, it's really funny. We got a couple guys like Al Michaels and certainly Neil Everett and a whole bunch of guys that are up there that know. But boy, it gets pretty tough on them sometimes. Riki, what drives you? I mean, let's talk a little bit more about, if you don't mind, the criticalness of the other world that you live in. This world that you live in where the push of a button can change everything. What's the light at the end of the tunnel? How can we figure out a way to live with each other?
Well, it is first and foremost respect for each other. And it's first and foremost building a relationship of trust. But it's the world, and we have enemies, and we have people that we may never get that trust with. But we still have to pursue that. We have to be able to continue to negate the world's or humans' most dangerous weapons. We have to do that. That's our responsibility, because if we don't, one of those weapons will be used by irrational actors.
Here's the thing that I'm most worried about. If you watch television at night, you see when they talk about medicine, how good it is, and yet how many bad things it can do to you. What's happened, in my opinion, is science and engineering in what you're talking about is so good that you can do so much with so little. It doesn't cost. It doesn't cost like it costs us to get into the missile business. It's what costs these new guys.
That's a great point. Let's go back to the world, and to China, who is at 1.4 billion people, and us at 300 million people. And China, not following the norms of society, are genetically making soldiers, airmen, and using science in ways that we would never, ever use to change that dynamic where they believe that they are the rightful leaders of the world. And we have to fight that.
Once somebody's made that assumption, it's pretty hard to walk it back, isn't it?
No, that's their path, and it's not a 5-year path. It's a 100-year path. It's a 50-year path. But what you can genetically make humans, but you can't teach them to be able to do things that we're talking about, fighting for a cause bigger than yourself.
The amazing thing, three people have asked about this, is the resilience and the patience that some of these folks have far outstrip ours. They're willing to wait generations to get what they want.
They are, but I don't believe that they're so totalitarian that they don't make decisions. They can't do what we do. We can adapt. We can take
That's
the
very
intent.
true, yeah.
They don't know how to do that. So that we've got this, and that's why we don't have the size of the population, but we have the technology edge that you've seen in all technologies that the United States dominates on.
Well, we are bringing back some of these greatest. We're bringing people back. Right now, the economy is sailing like it hasn't sold before, and that's primarily because we're realizing something you said off the air, that we have no alternative in this country to start making stuff again.
Right.
We forget about outsourcing, forget about buying everything made in China. Let's start making stuff again.
But I think our educational system across the country needs to go back into engineering.
Amen.
Because we are too service oriented. We are too liberal arts oriented. We are too entertainment oriented. We've got to continue to develop our base on science, mathematics, and engineering. That's critical for us to do.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting to weave back into the YIP project, and it's though you would think when Riki and I get together, how in the world do you jump from one thing to another the way you do it? Well, because I think it all plays a role in the big picture, and what we're talking about right now is a learning curve that our country needs to go through to keep being the leader that we are.
And initiation of individual leadership.
Yeah.
By our youth. By
that's why you say stick it into education
to make the country better, to make the communities better.
Yeah, I mean I guess it was the president's mantra to run that MAGA and all of that kind of stuff. But in many respects, I think that a lot of us have a newfound realization of who we are. I mean, that we can't get rolled over by some of these things.
And Hawaii of the best state in the union, I think, on tolerance and acceptance of diversity of cultures. I don't think there's a better state in our country that brings those cultures and respects those cultures.
Yeah, as bad as you think it is, my friends, until you've been to some other places. And that's one thing that you've been doing, incidentally, is traveling all over the place.
I just want to say one point here. I just came from Alaska.
I want to hear about that trip. Yeah.
Where we recognized our crews that are defending the wall to the north against mankind's most
literally a few handfuls of people, right? Yeah.
On top of that, but I do want to say that we had the most significant, complex missile defense test on March 25th. That was deemed 97% reliable and 97% ready to defeat any and all of North Korea's.
And this is based in Alaska.
Based in Alaska.
Right.
So we shot 2 missiles. So we did a salvo shoot of 2 GBIs against a North Korean missile out of Kwajalein.
Okay, so that means that they activated their the dummy, if you will, or the drone, or whatever you want to call it.
It was a 3-stage look-alike North Korean missile.
Just no payload.
No payload.
Yeah.
And
thank goodness.
It flew.
Yeah.
And we, with our sensors, with that SBX that's not in the harbor.
The ball
that was out there, with our space-based discrimination sensors, with our sea-based discrimination sensors, with our land-based X-band radars. Here in PRMF, that radar was part of this test. And we were able to put all that together, fuse it, and send it down to Colorado to feed these 2 missiles. And the first missile,
I'm just gobsmacked,
So the first GBI missile hit the target at a 22,000 mile an hour impact,
which is disintegrate whatever you hit, right? Yeah.
The second one that launched maybe 50 seconds afterwards chose the biggest piece of debris left and hit that. Do you understand? I mean, it's a little.
I don't understand.
I mean,
it's like Star Wars.
That is
on
unbelievable.
steroids.
Nobody in the world, China, Russia, nobody has done that.
If you take your fingers, I'm sure you've seen the sobriety check where the guy they try to make you put your fingers together. That's what this is. At hyper speeds. In other words, I think where people real quickly, because we got a lot of stuff I want to cover. But isn't it amazing from the moment of launch, number one, to take. There's something coming. Something just got launched somewhere. Yep. Where was it? I don't know. Look. And then, okay, here's what we think it is. Now let's go get it. And this all happens in a heartbeat. Right?
Yeah. Well, it's,
what are those kids up there? What are those people up there in Alaska like?
They're great. They are run by the National Guard. Yeah. So it's their state guardsmen. And I think we're going to do a little bit of it here in Hawaii where we start shifting that mission because the Homeland Defense mission of America in America is run by the National Guard units.
Good.
And I think the whole if PRMF gets activated or if the radar comes on and that gets activated.
Yeah.
I think there's a big role for Hawaiian National Guard to run that.
Yeah, and that's really great. That's good to hear. We'll talk about that in a little more.
Now, here's more of the Mike Buck Show on AM 690 and FM 94.3. The Answer.
Okay, so what we do here is cover as much ground, and we kick some tail and take some, write down some names. That's Riki Ellison is here in town, and he's here like always wearing a bunch of hats. And sometimes we differentiate between all of things. Well, one thing we haven't done, and we have to do this. Yesterday at the YIP, I saw a couple of the players came over when I invited them to come up to the podium after the program, and they wanted to look at your jewelry. They wanted to look at the Riki Ellison rings and things. And I know that you a long time ago, it's not all about ego, but it's just about saying, hey, look, this is what's attainable. I did this. There's no reason why you can't do this. And I saw kids actually, I don't want to say drooling, but pretty much drooling on it. Isn't that sort of a neat thing when somebody, because you're a full 2 generations away from these kids, right?
Yeah.
Look at your own, by the way, how's your boy? Where's your boy? Where is he?
He's playing for the New York Giants.
Of course
he's
he
doing
is.
great.
Yeah.
He's in his 8th year on that.
Isn't that terrific?
But I just would, because I'm an immigrant
Yeah.
to this country. I came, and my first port of entry was Hawaii.
Right here, right? Yeah.
Hawaii, and I didn't know anything about American football. I had no idea. And I got moved to a cowboy ranch in Rimrock, Arizona, and I had a foreman that fought for General Patton on a Stuart tank commander in World War II.
Amazing recall.
That raised me, and he took me to one football game when I was 12 to a USC football game in the Coliseum, and I wrote down on a piece of paper. I never played football.
Yeah.
That I would start for USC, beat Notre Dame, beat UCLA,
And get a rocket science degree while you're at it.
Win. Go to the Rose Bowl, win a national championship, and marry a USC cheerleader. I did at 12.
Yeah, yeah.
And 5 years later, I did all of it.
Yeah.
So it's the American dream, and that's why the Youth Impact Program and what you saw yesterday with some of those. Achievements. But some of that's what it came from. That's what we're trying to produce with the youth that we were going after, to be able to have them strive to be bigger than themselves and to contribute back.
Yeah, and it was really obviated yesterday, but I think, and one of the reasons why I get to jump around and go back and forth all the time on what can and can't be done is that there isn't anything that can't be done. Right now, there are things going on in Hawaii that I don't know, and Riki always educates us. In defense right now, we got all the armies in town. You're going to meet with some of them a little later on today. But we are actually building some stuff that needs more help and needs more of our congressional delegation to get together and learn more about it and get things done for us.
Well, one of the big things that I'm certainly engaged with is our ability to protect our force projection. So whether in the Pacific, it's all about your Navy battle groups or your Air Force capability off of islands.
Right, off island, yeah.
So you have to be able to defend both those groups for them to be able to do their mission. So how do you do that? And in today's world, with the with the inventions of complexity the Chinese have done with over-the-horizon cruise missiles and maneuverable missiles and new ballistic and hypersonics, where they can fire 1,000 miles away or more, you have to be able to figure a defense to do that. And we have to start doing that, because we haven't. And that is where I think one of the strengths are, that we have to be able to do this so we don't go to conflict.
One of the things that, and I do know that people are of mixed opinion. Right now, we're encouraging travelers from China, from Korea, from Japan, as we always do. And we have so many things that are going on. And we're actually forced into doing business with people that maybe not like us, and vice versa, all the time.
But again, we're the shining light.
Yeah.
So I think bringing them over to see and witness our democracy and the way we do things that are different than their life is also going to send messaging back that way. I don't see any harm in having different groups, and certainly our people that are from other countries to visit us.
Here's something important. I need you to talk about your relationship with Venezuela, because we're taking a look at a country that dramatically changed over the last decade or two. I mean, things are not like they used to be in Venezuela. And, there aren't people rushing to try to get into Venezuela. There are trying to get into the U.S., but yet we have some common grounds. And you've made certain headways in that area.
Well, I think we got to be very careful on how we put democracies in South America, because the failed democracies of these
They're awful.
dictatorships create this push of refugees and asylum seekers out of that nation. And we've got, obviously Cuba's involved, Russia's involved, China's involved in perpetuating these dictatorships that don't speak for the people. And Venezuela is a prime example of that. But what is it that we have to, once that person goes, we have to help. Where's our Marshall Plan? Look what we did with Japan and Germany. They're the top economies in the world.
After losing wars to us, we need, and we failed in Iraq, in Afghanistan. We didn't have a plan to be able to fix that once we got out of there. We need to be thinking through how we can, give them the support, and we're going to compete against China for that, right? So China's going to also try to rebuild that country versus us with no rules. Yeah, we got rules. What's interesting is that China is not going to be invaded by a caravan of people coming from Venezuela, but we are. And they will be invaded by a caravan coming from North Korea. There you go. That's right. Yeah. But nobody wants that. And right now, and you can comment to this real quickly because I know you hear these things, Mexico is getting very concerned because they don't want to be a stop on the route because a lot of people aren't getting to the U.S. But there's so much corruption. Oh, yeah. In the government in Mexico and, in getting the businesses and billions of dollars of transporting families and people. Oh, the coyotes are making a lot of money. And drugs. Yeah. So none of that. That's all got to be put in check. I mean, we are America. We should accept immigrants and to contribute to our society. But we have to filter them. We have to figure out who the bad ones are and not let them in and have a system where they all got to go through that gate. We don't have that. You said that earlier. We don't have the ability right now or the manpower to process the people that are legitimately trying to get in here. So what happens is we make them all criminals. Well, we make them all go out the other way to come in. Yeah. So there is a 9 to 12 year waiting list. Can you imagine that? To become a citizen, and funneling them into these borders. So it's not only the state National Guards, but it's the federal government that's got to put more personnel, more people, and more infrastructure. Can you imagine now flying people from our border into the middle of the country in plane full? You don't have a border. I mean, it's hard to get here unless you fly, and you control your entry into this into the state of Hawaii. But look at all of the wonderful Filipino families that have been embroiled in this mess forever, where they got family members that should and would be welcome here that just can't because of the way our system works. And I go back to it. We are the shining light, so we need to be able to bring in refugees from these failed democracies that are going forward or dictatorships going forward. What are you doing in Waikiki today before we run out of time? I'm going to go visit the 94th, our air and missile defense group that supports the Pacific AirCom, and then I'll be going over to the conference at Lampac. That's terrific. And coming up, real quickly, YIP is sold out, but we want people to find out a little bit more about it. Somebody just said, please tell Riki to update the website. I went to look at the YIP, and it's talking about 2018. We're working on it. We'll work on that. But we're trying to open that up to maybe we're going to accept some more people in there. We want to get the homeless in there, and we certainly want to look at maybe some other neighborhoods that we can focus on in North Shore. Eventually, we want to get the other islands in here. And also, by the way, and this was partially announced yesterday, Riki and the others are working very hard on equal opportunities, and there's going to be opportunities for young ladies. Right now, the most at risk with these young men without dads. Now we're looking into being able to do other things. Thank goodness for the generosity. But this takes. We want to do a YIP Girls program, but this takes. It took 4 or 5 years to develop it. You got to get the curriculum correctly that motivates the girls, and we don't want to mix them right now because they lose focus when we mix them in the groups. Well, you got plenty of time. You start another deal. All right, Riki, thanks, my friend. We'll see you again real soon. Mike. Also, thanks to Mufi Hanneman joining us this morning in Tourism Tuesday. Good job by Chaz on Thai, by Jack Waters. Stick around for Sebastian Gorka, and drop me an email. We'll be back at you tomorrow. The Mike Buck Show at gmail.com. The Mike Buck Show at gmail.com. AM 690, FM 94.3. The Answer. It's 9 o'clock.
AM 690 and FM 94.3. You found The Answer. KHNR, Honolulu. K232FL, Honolulu. The Answer. It's 9 o'clock.